My brother was the charming one, my sister was the ambitious one, and me? I was the one who needed to try harder. That's how my mother always said it, not cruel exactly, just matter of fact, like she was reading a report card. Your brother has a gift with people, your sister knows exactly what she wants. You're going to have to work for it, Kat. She said it the way you'd tell someone their car needs more maintenance than average. A simple fact. Nothing personal. I believed her for a long time. I'm 31 now, and I've had enough distance to see what that kind of thing does to a person. When your own mother introduces you to the world with a footnote, you spend the next 2 decades auditioning for a role you were told you'd never quite land. My brother Devin is 35. He walks into a room and people turn toward him like sunflowers, always has. He's the kind of person who remembers every name, laughs at the right moment, makes you feel like the most important person at the party. He sells commercial real estate in Calgary and he is very, very good at it. Everybody loves Devin. I mean that literally. At family gatherings, my grandmother would hold his face in both hands and say, This one is something special. My sister Amber is 28. She has the focus of someone who was born knowing what she wanted. She went to Dalhousie for law, finished in the top 10% of her class, and is now working at a firm in Halifax that does corporate litigation. She sends our parents a detailed life update email every Sunday. They print it out and put it on the fridge. I have seen this with my own eyes, and me. I grew up in the middle, literally and figuratively, middle child, middle grades, never quite sure what my thing was. I liked animals. I always liked animals. We had a beagle growing up named Chester, and I would spend hours just sitting on the floor with him, while my brother worked a room full of family friends and my sister color-coded her binders. Chester didn't care about any of that. Chester just wanted to be next to someone warm. I ended up studying veterinary medicine at the University of Guelph. It took me 6 years. It was one of the hardest programs I've ever heard of, and I chose it anyway. My parents were proud, I think, in the way they understood how to be proud, which meant my father asked me at Thanksgiving if I'd thought about the business side of it, and my mother said, "That's a lot of school for something that doesn't really scale, isn't it?" I smiled and asked her to pass the cranberry sauce. What I didn't tell them, what I hadn't told anyone yet because I was still figuring out how to say it without my hands shaking, was that I had just signed the paperwork on a small animal clinic in Waterloo. Not just joined a practice, bought one. A retiring vet named Dr. Blanchard had been looking to sell for 2 years, and we had been quietly in conversations for 8 months. The deal included the building, the client list, the equipment, and a staff of 4. I had spent the previous 3 years saving aggressively, taken a loan through the business development bank, and had a co-investor, my old university friend Sasha, who believed in the plan before I even fully did. The clinic was called Millbrook Animal Care. Within 6 months of me taking over, I rebranded it, updated the equipment, hired a second veterinarian, and opened a weekend urgent care service that became, very quickly, the busiest part of the operation. By the time the story I'm about to tell you took place, I had 41 active staff between both locations, because yes, by then there were 2. But none of my family knew any of that, not because I was hiding it exactly, more because no one had really asked. The occasion was my cousin Patrice's engagement party. Her fiancé's name is Graham, he's from Oakville, and his family is old Ontario money in the way that some families are not flashy, just there, like good furniture. The party was held at his parents' property in Muskoka. Late August, the kind of evening where the light comes off the water and everyone looks slightly better than they actually are. My aunt called me 2 weeks before to tell me I was invited, not my mother, my aunt. I found that out later. I drove up alone. It's about 3 hours from Waterloo and I went up the day before to stay at a motel in Bracebridge, because I'd learned long ago not to rely on being given one of the guest bedrooms. Once at a family cottage weekend, I'd arrived to find Devin installed in the nice room with the lake view, and me pointed toward the pull-out sofa. Devin had shrugged and said, "I got here first, Katie." He had. He'd also been told to come at noon when I'd been told to come at 3, but that wasn't a conversation anyone wanted to have. The party itself was a lawn event, catered maybe 60 people. Patrice looked genuinely happy in a way that made me glad for her. Graham was warm and attentive. His family was gracious. It should have been a lovely evening. I was standing near the drink station, talking to Graham's mother about her golden retriever's hip dysplasia. Because I cannot attend any event without this happening. when my aunt materialized beside me and pulled me gently by the elbow. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said, in a voice that was trying to be kind. The woman standing near the edge of the patio was somewhere in her late 40s, silver hair cut close, wearing a dress that cost what I pay for equipment maintenance. She had the particular stillness of someone who is used to being the most competent person in the room. "This is my niece Katherine," my aunt said, and then she laughed, a quick, nervous laugh. She's the animal lover of the family, always has been. "Katie, this is Diane." Diane looked at me with a direct, assessing look. "What kind of animals?" "Small animal practice," I said. "Dogs, cats, some exotics." "Are you at a clinic in the area?" Before I could answer, my aunt jumped in. "She works with animals, yes. Katherine has always been very nurturing." "Not everyone can do that, it takes a certain kind of person." It was the kind of thing you say about someone when you're trying to be kind and you don't actually know what they do. Nurturing. Like I volunteered at a shelter on weekends. I smiled. I said, "I actually own 2 veterinary clinics in Waterloo region." There was a small silence. My aunt laughed again, the same quick laugh. "Well, she's always been modest, haven't you?" "2, Diane said, looking at me more carefully now. "Since when?" "The first one I acquired about 4 years ago. The second location we opened 18 months back." Diane tilted her head. "Millbrook Animal Care?" I paused. "Yes. Do you know it?" "I know of it," she said. "A colleague of mine had their practice acquired by a group practice last year, and they mentioned you were someone who'd managed to hold independent in a market that's been getting consolidated very aggressively. They said you'd built something worth paying attention to." My aunt had gone very quiet. "I'm sorry," I said. "What do you do?" "I run a venture fund," Diane said. "We focus on healthcare-adjacent services. Veterinary medicine is something we've been watching for about 2 years now. I want to pause here and tell you something about what it feels like to be seen by someone in a room where you have spent your whole life being the footnote. It doesn't feel triumphant. Not at first. It feels surreal. Like a translation error. Like someone is describing a person, and slowly you realize they're describing you, and you have to adjust your understanding of which one of you is actually standing there. Diane asked if I had 20 minutes to talk. We walked down toward the dock. The party continued behind us. She asked good questions, real questions. About my patient volume, my staffing model, the urgent care weekends service, my expansion plans. She asked about my relationships with local breeders and the rescue organizations I partnered with. She asked about my margins. She asked about my long-term vision. I answered everything. My voice was steady. I was surprised by that. At some point I looked back up at the lawn and saw my mother watching us from near the food table. She had the expression of someone trying to solve a math problem. By the time we walked back up to the party, Diane had given me her card and said she wanted to schedule a proper meeting in the fall. "Not a pitch, just a conversation," she said. She was careful to say that. "I'm not promising anything. I just think there's something here worth talking about seriously." I said that sounded good. I put her card in my jacket pocket and went to find Patrice to tell her congratulations properly. My mother found me by the dessert table 20 minutes later. "Who was that woman?" "Her name is Diane," I said. "She runs a venture fund." "What were you talking about for so long?" She had questions about the clinics. My mother looked at me. "What clinics?" And there it was. The moment I had been quietly both dreading and, if I'm honest, privately curious about. Not because I'd been planning anything, but because this specific question, what clinics, was a window into something I'd been carrying for a long time. "Mom," I said, "I've owned a veterinary practice for 4 years. I opened a second location a year and a half ago. I have 41 staff. I just got contacted by a venture investor who wants to talk about scaling the model." She stared at me. "You? Why didn't you tell us?" "I told Dad when I signed the first agreement. He asked if I'd looked into franchising instead." She didn't say anything. "I told you I was taking over Dr. Blanchard's practice," I said, "at Thanksgiving, 4 years ago. You said it was a lot of school for something that didn't scale." I watched her face do something complicated. "I didn't mean." "I know," I said. "I meant it. I know you didn't mean it badly. I know you were trying to be realistic. But Mom, I've been building something real and it's been going well, and no one in this family has asked me about my work in 4 years. Not once. Devin and Amber get the Sunday call. I get, 'Are you still doing the animal thing?'" She opened her mouth. She closed it. "I'm not angry," I said, and I was surprised to find I wasn't. Not really, I just want you to know that I've been okay. More than okay. And I've been okay without needing anyone to notice. My father pulled me aside after dinner. He'd clearly talked to my mother. Your mother tells me you've been building something, he said. Yeah, Dad, 2 clinics, 2 locations, yeah. Looking at a third maybe next spring, depending on how a few things land. He was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the water. The lights from the dock were doing their thing on the surface. I asked you about the business side of it, he said finally. When you finished school, you did. Sounds like you figured it out. I did. He nodded. He didn't say he was proud. He's not really built that way, my father, and I stopped needing him to be a long time ago. But he nodded in a way that meant something, and when he touched my shoulder briefly before walking away, I understood that was what he had. Devin found me later down by the dock. The party had thinned out. He sat down beside me on the wooden planks, the lake dark and quiet in front of us. 41 staff, he said. Give or take, Katie. He said my name in a way he hadn't said it since we were kids. Why didn't you say anything? I did say things, nobody asked follow-up questions. He was quiet for a long time. Devin, who always has something to say, was quiet. I think, he said finally, we all had a picture of who you were, and we just kept looking at the picture. I know, that's on us. Yeah, I said, it kind of is. We sat there for another few minutes, the water was still. A loon called somewhere across the lake, the kind of sound that's so particular to this country that it stops you, even when you've heard it 1,000 times. For what it's worth, Devin said, I think the animal thing is pretty incredible. I laughed. Actually laughed. It's a little more than a thing, I said. I know that now. My sister called me the following Tuesday, Amber, who sends the Sunday emails and gets them printed and put on the fridge. She's not someone who calls without a reason, so I was curious. Mom told me about the party, she said. Okay, she told me about the investor, and the clinics. And, Katherine, why have you never talked about any of this? I thought about how to answer that honestly. Because every time I mentioned my work, someone changed the subject to yours, I said. Or Devin's. It wasn't malicious. It was just I was background. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. It was just the dynamic. Amber was quiet in a way that felt like she was actually sitting with what I'd said. That was new. I looked up Millbrook Animal Care, she said. Okay. You have like 480 Google reviews. You're averaging 4.9. We work hard on that, I said. One person wrote that your clinic saved their rabbit and they drove from Hamilton to see you specifically. That would be Mrs. LeBlanc, I said. She's very loyal. Katherine. My sister said my name the same way Devin had. I'm sorry. I didn't rush to say it was fine. I let the apology sit in the air for a second, which felt important. I appreciate that, I said. Really? Can I come see the clinic sometime? I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. I'll have someone show you around. The staff are really good. You'd like them. The meeting with Diane happened in October, at her office in Toronto. I took the train down and wore the good blazer I'd bought when I signed the second lease. She had done real homework. She knew our patienters. She knew our retention rate. She knew about the rescue organization partnerships and how they'd driven referrals. She proposed a minority investment that would allow us to open 2 additional locations within 24 months while retaining full operational control. The terms were fair. Her team was straightforward. I didn't say yes in the room. I said I'd consult with Sasha and get back to her within 2 weeks. Diane said that was exactly the right answer, and that she'd be concerned if I'd said yes on the spot. I called Sasha from the train platform at Union Station, standing in that specific kind of November wind that comes off Lake Ontario and goes straight through every layer you're wearing. Well, Sasha said. I think it's real, I said. Do you want to do it? I looked up at the departures board. My train was boarding. I think we've been ready for this for a while, I said. I just needed someone else to see it first. I've been thinking lately about what my mother meant, all those years ago when she said I'd have to work for it. I think she believed she was preparing me. I think she thought she was telling me something true about the world, something useful, something a good mother tells a child so they won't be blindsided. She wasn't wrong, exactly. I did work for it. What she missed was that the working was never the punishment she thought it was. The quiet, the hours, the building something from nothing. I didn't do that in spite of who I was. I did it because of it. Chester used to fall asleep against my leg when I did homework on the floor. Just warm weight, steady breathing, no commentary, no comparative analysis, no footnotes. I think I learned something from that dog that no one in my family taught me. You don't have to perform your value for the room. You can just be in the room. And if the room isn't paying attention, that's information about the room, not about you. I still have a dog actually. A 3-year-old shepherd mix named Bo. He came in as a surrender case at the clinic, gray muzzle already coming in despite his age, anxious around men in hats. He's sitting on my feet right now as I write this. He doesn't know I own 2 veterinary clinics. He doesn't know about the venture meeting or the expansion or the 4.9 stars. He just knows I come home. He just knows I'm here. Some days that's the most grounding thing I have. The 3rd location opens in April, a new build in Cambridge. We're naming it Riverstone Animal Care. The whole team is excited. I'm excited. Diane's fund made the investment official last month, and the papers are signed and the space is being built out, and it's real in a way that still sometimes catches me off guard. I keep meaning to tell my mother about April, about Cambridge, about the name. I think I will. I think this time she'll ask questions. Not because the story changed, but because she finally stopped looking at the picture and looked at me instead. And if she doesn't, well, I'll still open in April. Bo and I will drive over on the first morning, and I'll unlock the door, and the staff will arrive, and the first patient will come in, probably some anxious tabby in a carrier making that specific sound that cats make when they've decided today is the worst day of their life. And I'll kneel down. And I'll open the carrier door, and I'll say, hey, you're okay, you're safe now, let's see what we can do. That's always been the job, it was never about who was watching.